The history of the cultivation and use of spices is perhaps the most romantic story. The history of the cultivation and use of spices is perhaps the most romantic story of any vegetable product. From the earliest known eras of civilization, spices were eagerly sought in all parts of the world. The earliest explorers in their search after gold paid almost as much attention to drugs and spices, and it was the pursuit of these as much as anything which led to the first rounding of the Cape of Good Hope and the colonization of the East Indies. Later, the greed of the Dutch in maintaining the monopoly of the eastern spice trade led to the founding of the Straits Settlement Colony, while the pepper gardens of southern India, the vanilla of Mauritius, and the Seychelles, the cinnamon and cardamoms of Ceylon all played important parts in opening up of these countries to Western civilization and Western trade. It must be noticed that the greater part of the spices that have been valued by man are derived from the Asiatic tropics, while the other quarters of the globe have produced comparatively few. Thus, we have the following distribution. From Asia are derived pepper, cardamoms, cinnamon, natives of southern India and Ceylon, nutmegs and maize, cloves, clove bark, turmeric, ginger, greater galangal. From the Malay archipelago, cassia bark, and lesser galangal. From China, Africa gave us grains of paradise, Madagascar, Ravensara aromatica, while the American tropics gave us only vanilla, capsicums, and pimento. The colder climates of northern Europe and Asia produced but few. Coriander, cumin, caraway seed, and mustard and calamus root. Of the East Asiatic tropical spices, most are not really known in the wild state, and it is, in many cases, actually doubtful as to where was their place of origin. The appreciation of spices as flavoring for the simple rice food of the Oriental, extending over unknown ages, has perhaps caused the Oriental to cultivate forms of the aromatic trees and shrubs they met with in the forests in the forms we now know them in. But it must be admitted that in most cases the well-known nutmegs, cloves, ginger, and others do not bear any close resemblance botanically to anything we have since met with in the forests. The cause of this disappearance of the original plant may be perhaps due to the removal to or enclosure in gardens of the plant when found in a wild state. In the case of trees of which the fruit is valuable, the native, on finding it in the forest, may form a garden round them, or he may transfer all the seedlings he can find to his garden. Or by steadily collecting the crop of seed annually, may practically in time exterminate the plant in the forest. Or, by steadily collecting the crop of seed annually, may practically in time exterminate the plant in the forest. While later selections of the most productive and valuable forms may modify the fruit so much that we can hardly now recognize it. Spices can be arranged according to the parts of the plant which form the commercial product. Thus, in cloves, it is the flower bud which is used. In nutmegs, vanilla, capsicums, pepper, it is the fruit. Ginger and turmeric, the underground stems. Cinnamon and cassia, the bark. This is perhaps the most convenient way of sorting them, and I have adopted it. Cultivations in general can be classified into groups in the following way. 1. Plantation cultivations, which are generally effected on a large scale and belong to the class of permanent crops, lasting for a number of years. Such are nutmegs, cloves, cardamom, cinnamon, vanilla. 2. Garden crops, which are done on a smaller scale, are less permanent and often cultivated as a subsidiary crop to other permanent crops, such are ginger, capsicums, pepper. 3. Field crops, which are done on a large scale as a temporary crop and often crown in rotation with other field crops, such are coriander and cumin. A certain number of commercial spices are hardly cultivated at all, but are derived from wild trees or plants, the demand for them not being greater at present than the forest can supply. Such are Malay, cassia bark, and calamus root. Any of them may at any time, however, come into a greater demand, and it would then be necessary to develop the cultivation. It is therefore desirable to pay some attention to them, as it is not always easy to predict their future. Thus, calamus root is grown all over the East, as well as in many other parts of the world, in small quantities as a native medicine and imported occasionally into European markets. Recently, however, a planter in the Malay states distilled the oil of it and sent some of it with other oils to Europe for examination. It proved to be in great request by certain brewing firms as a beer flavoring and was highly valued. The demand for this product was quite unknown to cultivators and distillers in the East. The produce included under the name of spices comprises all aromatic vegetable products, which are used in flavoring food and drinks, but almost all have other uses as well, for which they are in great request in commerce. Many are used in perfumery or in soap making, such as vanilla, cloves, and pepper, others in the manufacture of incense, cinnamon. A good number are utilized in medicine, either as flavoring or for their special therapeutic values, cardamoms, ginger, nutmegs, etc. Turmeric is used in dyeing, especially by natives, clove oil in microscopy, and others of the spices in various arts. All these uses add to the commercial demand and are of considerable importance to the planter. Of late years, there can be no doubt that the use of spice as flavoring by European nations has considerably diminished. In the 12th and later centuries, the use of spice in every household was very large and was only regulated by their cost. But the last few years have shown a certain amount of falling off in the demand for spiced foods, and the spice box is not so important a household utensil as it was. Artificial flavorings, too, have made some amount of alteration in the demand, but if profits on spices are not as large as they were in the days when, next to gold, spices were considered most worth risking life and money for, there is still a good profit to be obtained by their cultivation. The trade is still large among European nations, and the demand by Orientals, the greatest spice lovers,
The greatest spice lovers, the greatest spice lovers, the greatest spice lovers is as large as ever it was.
The area included in this work as the area of the tropics lies between latitude 25 north and 25 south, and this includes a considerable variation in regions and climates. A great portion is occupied by the tropical rainforest region, where the air is constantly moist and there is practically no dry season. This is the greatest spice region, where almost every spice mentioned in this work can be cultivated with success. The rainfall is heavy and constant. That is to say, a little falls every day or two, and at the breaks of the monsoon, there are generally some very heavy falls, continuing for a whole day or two, with little or no break. The temperature is high, but not so great as a little farther north. In this area, beside the rainforest region, we have regions in which there is a distinct dry period. Lasting for some months and followed by heavy rains. During the dry weather, the temperature is very high. Such trees as are not adapted especially for this region do not thrive here. Most of the trees of this region are leafless in the dry season, and trees like the nutmeg and clove, which are not deciduous but evergreen, succumb at the first dry spell. In this region, the annual field crop spices coriander, cumin, chilies are commonly grown, as well as the rhizomatous ginger and turmeric, which in this climate lose their leaves during the dry spell. Some of the tropical spices, such as capsicums and ginger, have a wider cultivation area than most of the others and go almost outside the tropical area. But on the whole, the areas of successful cultivation are limited. It is rather remarkable that so large a proportion of the spices of the tropics are successfully grown on islands only, or in close propinquity to the sea. Among these are nutmeg, cloves, vanilla, clove box, and perhaps we may add cinnamon and cardamoms as island plants. The various soils suited for the different spices are mentioned under their respective headings. There seems to be increasing evidence that with most plants, the physical characteristics of the soil are more important than its chemical constituents. Its water capacity, permeability, and capillary conduction, or power of absorbing water, are its most important characteristics. Different crops require different degrees of moisture or dryness. Most, however, of the plants described in this work require a greater average moisture in an accessible and utilizable form than the plants of colder climates, as their natural habitat is in the wetter part of the tropics. Plants have a great power of adaptation to surroundings, though at the same time there is a limit to their endurance. In soil where it cannot obtain its food and water in sufficient quantity, a plant becomes pale and weak. The leaves show an unmistakable yellow tint instead of the rich green, whether light or dark, of the normal plant. It makes but little growth and is liable to attacks of insects and fungi. It is, in the first place, of the greatest importance to select a suitable soil. Sandy spots, except in the case of cinnamon, waterlogged soils, and soils formed almost exclusively of vegetable debris or impregnated with salts, should be avoided. It is possible in most of these cases to improve the soils, but the cost may be too great to be worthwhile. In prospecting for a good site for the estate, the ground should be dug to a depth of at least 2 feet in order to form an idea of the subsoil, which is often different from the surface layers. The diseases from which plants suffer are due to insects or fungi. Bacteria, which play the chief part in diseases of animals, seem seldom to be the cause of disease among plants. The known diseases of each plant are described in each chapter dealing with the species. The careful watching for disease is one of the most important duties of the planter. No attack, however mild, should be overlooked as unimportant. In an outbreak, a disease often begins very slowly. A plant here and there dies, and no notice is taken of this. More are attacked, and usually the disease appears in patches about the estate. Too often, it is not until a considerable number of plants are dead or dying that the planter takes any steps to stop it. Sometimes the disease assumes a virulent nature, spreading rapidly from each center of infection, and before the planter has time to fairly combat it, the estate may be ruined. In any case, when it has once reached the virulent stage, the expenses of checking it will be great, while earlier action, when the disease first showed itself, would have cost but a trivial sum. A yellowing of the leaves of a plant is usually a sign that it is in an unhealthy state. It may be due to starvation from destruction of a portion of the roots or to an insufficient food supply. But it is also occasionally due to excessive exposure to heat and sunlight. The destruction or injury to the roots may be due to an underground fungus or to some insect such as the grub of a cockchafer biting through them. Again, it may be due to their having reached poor soil or having exhausted most of the accessible nutriment. The yellowing of the leaves is also noticeable in plants growing in waterlogged soil. When a plant is weak from insufficient food, it is much more liable to attacks from insects and fungi. And where a plant has been injured by a pest, it is advisable to manure it so as to give it a fresh start and enable it to resist the attacks of the pest. In the case of turmeric and ginger, the yellowing of the leaf is a preliminary stage in the death of the leaf and is one of the signs that the plant is passing into a resting stage. At this time, the plant is ready for digging, and the yellowing is therefore a normal condition. Many different insecticides have been placed on the market by horticultural firms. In most of them, the poisonous part consists of nicotine or some form of arsenic. Nicotine solutions are prepared by soaking common or waste tobacco in water, enough being used to cover the tobacco. When the solution is of the color of strong tea, it is diluted and sprayed or watered over the plants. Usually, in the East, at least, tobacco good enough for this purpose can be obtained cheaply. Arsenites of copper, Paris green and London purple are often used, but I think it is better to avoid them, as they are apt to burn the foliage and there is a probable risk of poisoning from them. Kerosene emulsion is one of the best insecticides. It may be made with condensed or sour milk or with soap, the latter being more generally used. Kerosene and condensed milk. Kerosene, 2 gallons. Milk, 3 pints. Water, 6 pints. Kerosene and sour milk. Kerosene, 2 gallons. Sour milk, 1 gallon. When used, they should be churned up with a stick or by means of a force pump to make the emulsion regular and well mixed when it can be diluted. Kerosene and soap emulsion. The best way of making this is with soft soap. 1 quart of soft soap is dissolved in 2 quarts of boiling water. Remove from the fire and add 1 pint of kerosene and stir briskly. Before using, dilute with an equal quantity of water. This emulsion will keep for a considerable time. Should the soap be too caustic for the foliage, use only half the quantity. Soft soap is not always procurable, and hard soap can then be used. The following recipe is recommended by Loader, spraying of plants. Dissolve 1/4 pound of hard soap in 2 quarts of water. Add 1 pint of kerosene oil and pump the mixture back into itself while hot. Dilute with twice its bulk of water before using. Hard soap 1 pound. Kerosene 2 gallons. Boiling soft water 1 gallon. Dissolve the soap in boiling water, then add the kerosene and churn for 5 or 10 minutes. It is essential that the liquids mixed should be as warm as possible. The author himself has been in the habit of heating the mixture after adding the oil, but care has to be taken not to let it catch fire. With experiences of ordinary coolie recklessness, one would not recommend this on an estate worked by coolies. Tuba root is one of the best insecticides, and it is the most regularly used by the Chinese in the Malay Peninsula for treating their vegetable and other crops. The plant known as tuba, Deres elliptica, is a woody climber propagated by cuttings. It will grow in any corner of the garden and soon develops into a fairly large mass of stems lying on the ground. The roots are pounded up in water and the decoction poured or sprayed over the crop, where it will kill all caterpillars, grasshoppers, and other insects. It is perfectly harmless to any plants. The decoction is poisonous to human beings, but only when taken in large quantities, and risk from it in the case of any of our spice plants is infinitesimal.